Wake up, nerds! It's Resident Evil Director's Cut on Saturday morning! Welcome to Spooky Sauce, where we play spooky/retro games or, anything else I feel like. So, survival horror games totally exploded in the late 90s. And there were lots of games on the PS1, the Dreamcast, the GameCube, and also, the PlayStation 2. But the thing is, the success of these games have to be owed to the original Resident Evil. So, even though it, set the standard for survival horror games, the first Resident Evil is seriously, it's unlike all the others in the series. The most obvious difference, of course, is that this one used live actors. And the reason it did this was because the PlayStation 1 was a disc system. So this, totally made it more like a PC running CD-ROM games, from the early 1990s. Even though, it was a technical feat to have live video in the game, it was quickly abandoned after this game was made. And by Resident Evil 2, we had full CG characters. I guess that makes sense. Full CG characters is gonna make it a lot easier to translate into other languages. And from a storytelling perspective, you're not gonna be limited by production costs if you're going full CG. Alright, well, enough history, nerds. It's time to load your bazooka, mix some green herbs, and let's fast forward with Resident Evil. Director's cut. Alright. Chris or Jill? That's right. Playing Jill. For the ladies. So, the vibe of this game was supposed to be like an American horror movie. I guess they were kind of going for a George Romero-style zombie movie, But, you know what? I think it changes over the course of the game, and, we can talk about that as that happens. Also, I guess Raccoon City is, in the Midwest. But, this is, vaguely in the Midwest. I live in the Midwest, and there are no mountains in the Midwest, man. I'm just saying. This is really a Japanese, perception of what the American Midwest is. But you know what? I get it. It's cool. It's kind of part of the charm of this game, It's just kind of one of those lost in translation kind of things.
Hey! Come here!
Also, speaking of lost in translation, so the elephant in the room with this game is the really cheesy acting. So, the producers wanted the whole thing to be, in English with Japanese subtitles for the Japanese market, but something they didn't count on was just how cheesy it was gonna be, because, they didn't really understand the cheesy acting. That was totally lost in translation, so that's why it's like this in the game. They just didn't get it.
Chris Redfield
enjoys LA looks, smirking, and making people look for him.
Jill Valentine
Enjoys berets, unflattering pants, and looking vague.
Mary Burton
You know what? I don't know what this guy's into, but it's probably illegal.
Rebecca Chambers
Thought she was auditioning for a sitcom.
Albert Wesker
Is really, really into Val Kilmer cosplay.
Resident Evil
Okay, did I just see a commercial for a steakhouse? Man, now I want steak. Okay, let's talk about the game mechanics for a second here. See, this is a survival horror game, and I know that it technically defined the, survival horror genre, but first and foremost, this is an adventure game, alright? So that means you're gonna be running around, collecting items, solving puzzles, finding keys to unlock, locked doors. But, the other element of this is, in fact, the survival horror part. So that means you're gonna be finding ammo for your weapons, because, there's actually a finite amount of ammo in this whole game. The other thing you gotta do is inventory management, because you only have so much, stuff you can carry. You have so many inventory slots. And then the other thing you gotta do is you have to manage your health, which means mixing green herbs, and you can also find these like first aid spray things around. So you're gonna be like exploring the mansion, you know, unlocking doors, using items, and solving puzzles. You're also gonna find the other missing STARS members, except, seriously man, they're jacked up. I mean, Kenneth, he's lost his head. You know, it's just kinda come off. It's gross. You also run into Forrest, who's been, you know, pecked to death.
It's awful.
And actually, depending on when you find Forrest, you know, this encounter is different, if Barry is there or not. And then you also find Richard, who's, you know, got some, man, this guy's really jacked up. And, you know, I mean, when you see him, you know he's not gonna make it. Sorry for the spoiler.
No! Richard!
The other thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna run into Barry a few times, and, you know, depending on how you play the game, depends on, you know, when and where you run into Barry. But, you know, depending on when that happens, you know, he'll help you out, he'll give you some useful stuff. You know, it's actually, you know, it's alright. But this is like one of those things where the game changes, depending on how you play it.
What's going on?
So, as you go, you're also going to uncover, you know, the plot of the game, you know, like the backstory. And you're gonna get this like in diary entries, journals, you know. But most of the stuff you're gonna run into in this house is, you know, zombies. Lots of zombies. Zombie dogs. A zombie plant. And a giant zombie snake. So, after exploring the house, you're gonna find the items that are gonna let you out the back door, and you're gonna end up in the gardens, where you'll find more zombie dogs, and then more zombie dogs, and then, you know, just a few more zombie dogs. But then you'll end up in, like, the scientist dormitory. And I guess this was like where the scientists who were working for Umbrella were hanging out, and that's where they lived. But now they're all zombies. You know, come to think of it, like, all the zombies in this game were scientists, so that means, like, all the zombies are actually nerds. Just saying. Also in the dorm, this is where you're gonna encounter these, like, giant spiders. And man, these things are freaky. I mean, they're like hanging out on the ceiling, and then they drop down on you, and, you know, you could shoot them. But then they like let all these little spiders out, man. Ugh, I hate those things. Okay, so as you move through the dorms, you're gonna run into more puzzles, you know, some more nerds, and, you know, that are zombies, of course. And then you're gonna run into zombie sharks. Zombie sharks! Seriously, man, I'm not making this up. They're zombie sharks. That's freaking awesome. And then you'll also run into a giant zombie plant, which is basically a big jerk. Okay, here's the thing. If you make the V-Jolt, you know, mix it up in the storage room, you can take it down to the basement and put it on the roots of the big jerk plant, and it'll kind of shrivel up. It'll make the boss fight a whole lot easier. If you don't do this, you know, he does one of those, like, you know, true form things where you fight him once and then he comes back stronger. But if you kill the root, man, he just goes down once and it's done. It's pretty awesome. So on the way out of the dormitory when you're done, you're gonna run into Wesker again. And, you know, Jill's all like,
Where on earth have you been?
and then Wesker says something to the extent of like, you know, Jill, we should totally kill everybody. And then Jill's like,
Yes, I agree with you.
and then Wesker's like, we should start with Chris and Barry.
Yes, you're right.
Actually, it doesn't actually go that way, but it'd be pretty awesome if it did. Okay, so you make your way back to the house, but on the way, you're getting followed. And you're actually getting followed by these hunter guys, which are like these like ape-like monster jerks. And man, they could jack you up if you're not careful. So, you know, you gotta be really careful around these guys. So, what I suggest is, save every last Magnum bullet you've got. Like, don't use the Magnum at all. Save them for these guys. Because these guys are gonna pop up basically where all the zombies were before you went out to the dorm. The first part of the game where you're in the house. Like, now hunters are there where, the zombies used to be. So, anyway, you're back in the house, and there's a few more puzzles, a few more nerds, and then there's, Zombie Snake Part 2, and eventually you're gonna find the battery, which will allow you to go back to the gardens and get you down to the underground passages. Okay, it's like really spooky down here in the underground passages.
Oh, Jill.
But, almost immediately you run into Barry, and with him you find Enrico, the other STARS team member. But as, Jill says it.
Enrico!
So anyway,
STARS
he
are
reveals
doomed.
that there's like a
Someone
STARS
is a traitor.
conspiracy and someone's betrayed them. But, he
Everything
immediately
was
gets
plotted
shot
from the
before he
start
tells
by
you who it
Umbrella.
is. Anyway, moving on, you find more hunters. And man, it's dark down here and it's really hard to see. So most of the time, you just hear them. Again, Magnum rounds are the way to go. Just knock these guys out, man. Okay, I really don't like spiders, and there's a big one down here, and it's like, oh man, he's huge. But the good news is that if you use the Magnum, you can take him out with like 3 or 4 shots. That's pretty awesome. And if you leave right after you take him down, you can avoid the little spiders that I guess that was inside him the whole time. That's gross. But anyway, the underground actually isn't that long, There's not that much puzzle solving. I mean, you have the weird crank room thing that happens. And there's some Indiana Jones boulders, but, soon you're like in the back garden where there's like a fountain thing. And that leads you to the secret entrance to the Umbrella Lab. So, you're getting close to the end when you end up in a secret underground lab, right? Okay, well, anyway, down here you're gonna encounter more nerds, more puzzles, and you're also gonna come to a room with a computer in it. Now, logging into this thing will allow you to unlock a couple doors. So, look, I'm just gonna cheat for you. So, instead of looking around the whole lab for this, I'm just gonna tell you, the login name is John. The password is Ada, A-D-A. And then there's a second password you gotta put in, and that one's Mole, M-O-L-E. There, you just unlocked a couple doors. Just saved you some time. You're welcome. Okay, so the other thing you can do while you're down in the lab, if you want to, I mean, it's totally optional, it'll affect how the game ends. But you can rescue Chris, because, Umbrella's got him locked up down here in the nerd dungeon. But in order to do that, you're gonna have to find some MO discs. There are 3 of them, and then you trade them for passwords that will get you through the door. Okay, so the first MO disc is actually back in the main house, but the other 2 are down in the lab. So once you do that, you can unlock the door and go talk to him, but you can't get him out yet. So the last thing you gotta do in the lab is you gotta get power to the elevator, and you gotta do that by routing power in the power room, but watch out, because there's like these hanging like monkey monster dudes. Yeah, they're kind of a pain, so yeah, save some Magnum bullets for these clowns. But so after you do that, you can turn on the power to the elevator. So when you do that, like Barry shows up again, and you guys have a little chat.
Jill.
And then he rides the elevator down to the lab with you. And this is where you meet Wesker, where he basically reveals that he is in fact a big fat jerk. He's manipulating Barry and blackmailing him. And he's also gonna double cross, Umbrella, which probably isn't a good idea, but anyway. So this is also where the story can fork off again. So in one version, Barry, sods off and Wesker takes you down to the lab.
Destroy stars.
But in another version, Barry totally knocks Wesker out, and then you and Barry go down to the lab. And then while you're down there, you have to fight, Tyrant. So, Barry, wants to take out Tyrant, so he does it by, literally letting him out. But, this fight isn't bad. Keep your distance, just fire some bazooka rounds at him. He goes down pretty easy. Then, you and Barry, you escape. You go back upstairs where someone has activated the self-destruct. Okay, spoiler, it was totally Wesker. Now's a good time to go pick up Chris.
Oh,
chill. Yeah, I mean, if you did all the work
Sorry
doing the
for
Mo
keeping you
disc
waiting.
thing, it'd be kind of a jerk
Everything
move
is
not to,
done?
Well,
rescue him
almost,
after you
yes.
did all that.
Now let's go.
Anyway, don't forget about him, and then you guys can, take off. So, you do like a race down to the helipad, you use a battery, and then you get the countdown. So, you go ahead to the helipad while the clock's running down, making you all, anxious and stuff. And then when you get to the helipad, Tyrant comes back, starts busting stuff up. Now, he's a lot tougher this time, probably because he's, angry that you shot bazooka rounds at him. So it's a good idea to keep your distance here and just take pot shots at him, but, you gotta move, because there's a countdown. But he can jack you up, so don't let him do that. But eventually, Brad in the helicopter will drop a rocket launcher, and then you can, fire a Deus Ex rocket at him, and then he just explodes. Yeah. It's weird because it's satisfying because it's over, but it's kind of, I don't know. Is it cheap? Yeah, who cares? So everybody, gets on the helicopter, and you ride off into a sunrise and, a new day. Alright, so, if you like this video, then click the subscribe button, hit the like button, do both, and I'll make all your dreams come true. Probably. Also, let me know down in the comments below if you're interested in seeing a playthrough of Resident Evil, or if you have a game you want me to play, leave a suggestion down in the comments, and I'll check it out. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Saturday, nerds!